Alrighty, good everybody, it's the doggy! It's time for another showcase video. This one's more for the Australian audience, but for those outside of Australia, be prepared to learn about a new iconic Australian rock band from the 1970s. Today is the 20th anniversary of the death of Skyhooks lead singer Graham Shirley Strawn, nicknamed Shirl, due to his curly hair similar to that of Shirley Temple. He tragically died in a helicopter crash up here in Brisbane, I believe. Man, I was only, 7 years old at the time? Damn, time goes by. Anyway, this is a collection of all my copies of their albums from 1974 to 1980 or so, including a couple of live albums and stuff. Let's start right from the very beginning. This is their most infamous album, released in 1974, Living in the 70s, which has a number of major hits on it, including the title track and Horror Movie, and some of these titles I really shouldn't read. I mean, you could probably just read them for yourself, but some of these titles I'm thinking they'd probably send the SJWs after me. Some of those songs were very Australian for the time too. This isn't the original pressing, but this is from probably 77, this particular reissue. I'm not 100% certain. I think this Mushroom label was introduced in 75, so it could be from around that time too. I do know the original had a different design. Side 1 and side 2 here. Definitely their best album in my opinion. It's got some of their best songs. But so is their second album from 1975. This is Ego Is Not a Dirty Word. Another one of their big hits as well. The band lineup is Shirley Strawn, as mentioned, on lead vocals. And we have Bob Starkey on guitar. Red Simon's there on guitar as well. Bass player is Greg McCanish. And the drummer is Alfred Strauchs, or Emmett Alfred Strauchs, aka Freddie Caboodle-Schnitzer. Bit of a silly name, actually. But, hey. There's the gatefold on the inside there. A silly little love letter from a fan. Probably at the record itself, we've got a Mushroom Records inner sleeve, listing a few albums from the time, including Living in the 70s mentioned down here as well, and on the far right, Buster Brown, Something to Say, which of course features Phil Rudd of AC/DC on drums and Angry Anderson of Rose Tattoo on lead vocals. For the record, I do not have that album. It is mega rare and very hard to find. Anyway, here's the Ego Is Not a Dirty Word LP. We've got side 1 here. And side 2. These albums are getting notoriously hard to come by. It was a very interesting period of time back in 1975 when Skyhooks were the biggest band in this country. Slowly but surely, they were overtaken by AC/DC, of course. Skyhooks did one United States tour in 1976, and whilst they were over in the US, they recorded the majority of their third album. I am not going to read that title because, again, the social justice warriors will go crazy. Like, yeah, okay. Especially, it's very politically incorrect, some of these songs as well. Especially the whole Black Sheep thing, like that is mega politically incorrect for the time. But, 1970s, what do you expect? Doesn't bother me though, I mean, I'm a 1990s kid for crying out loud. Great, Kane's barking in the background again, but that's alright, you probably won't hear him. He's outside. Anyway, this is the album, $1 Million Riff. That was a great song from that particular time. Interesting songs here. We got Somewhere in Sydney and Blue Jeans. That was another single off the album, I think. Side 2, we've got This Is My City and Crazy Heart. That's another classic as well. Very underrated songs, those ones. Especially the stuff with Ego, you know, like Private Eye and stuff. 1977, their first compilation album was released. This is titled the Skyhooks Tapes. Not exactly certain what month it was, but I do believe it was in 77. This basically cleaned up B-sides, singles, and unreleased recordings as well, and then at least one known live performance, I believe, as well. I think this is the first, yeah. And some good songs on this one too. Their single from that year, Party to End All Parties, and its B-side, Hot Rod James. Yeah. Side 2, we've got a live cover of Chuck Berry's Let It Rock. And the second song is actually Whatever Happened to the Revolution, but that's a re-recording that was done whilst they were in the US. You might possibly find them on YouTube. I think I should link some of their stuff down below, I don't know. Not so sure. Basically, I'm just going to be showing one copy of each album. I do have multiple repressings of a couple of the albums, but otherwise I'm just going to show you the original pressings from this point onwards, from Ego onwards anyway. This is their 1978 album, Guilty Until Proven Insane. This is the red vinyl edition, which is a bit hard to find. It was relatively limited. This is when Bob Spencer, pictured here, had replaced Red Sivens as the lead guitarist. Bob Spencer would later go on and have stints with other Australian bands like The Angels and the Choir Boys, and is now currently a member of another Aussie band, Rose Tattoo, with Angry Anderson, as mentioned earlier. And also, that band now features former AC/DC bass player Mark Evans. Anyway, we've got a few really good deep cuts on this one. Women in Uniform, Boogie, and of course a track on side 2 called Why Don't You All Get Well. And yes, we've got here one called Hotel Hell, which I believe was supposedly used for Gordon Ramsay's Hotel Hell, but then again, can't trust online. Based on the sticker, this looks like it's a promo copy, just based on the sample sticker here. So I'm guessing that makes my copy of this rather unique. I do have a black coloured original pressing of this with the same label, but retail. But that's not going to be shown here, just the red vinyl, which is quite pricey as it is. Later on in 1978, Skyhooks released their first live album, which is titled Live Be In It, which is a reference to the Life Be In It commercials that used to air back in those days. This is another gatefold, I believe, yeah. Features a picture of the band performing from, I think, around that time. Yeah, that's about right. This is a double album, I believe, as well, yeah. Got a few tour dates mentioned here. Yeah, Bob Starkey there, and Bob Spencer. Back when he used to have hair, he's been bald since the early 80s, I believe. He was definitely bald by the time he joined the Angels in 1985. Yeah, this has got a few non-album songs like Sitting in a Bar in Adelaide. It's a very interesting deep cut performed live. And of course, probably their most infamous song, All My Friends Are Getting Married, which we'll get to later on as well. And LP number 2. Hang on. Freddie Strauch's on the drums. Definitely one of the most underrated drummers this country ever produced. And this side here, we've got Shirl on the right and McCanish, the bass player, Greg McCanish on the left. More interesting live performances here. Due to the Hook was a B-side, I believe. And we've also got a cover of Rolling Stones' Brown Sugar, which is ironic. We just recently lost Rolling Stones drummer, which is a real shame. I'm not really a Rolling Stones fan, to be honest. More into the Australian bands. You got a rework of Ego is not a dirty word. It's rather amusing and rather explicit, and I could not play that here even if I wanted to. Okay, in 1979, Shirley Strawn left the band and was initially replaced by Tony Williams on lead vocals. But just before they recorded anything new, they put out another compilation called The Best of Skyhooks. I think I did show this off on my cassette compilation video as well, alongside their Ego album, I think, and a couple of others I have. And this had the best of what they had at the time, including Over the Border, which was the first recording to feature the new vocalist Tony Williams. It was basically written about what life was like here in Queensland, including our, at the time, premier, the late Joe Bielke-Peterson. Again, that was long before my time, though, so, you know, it just shows you how young I am. And again, this is very, very underrated compilation. Basically formed the, what eventually became repackaged as latest and greatest in 1990, but we'll get to that a bit later. Okay, this here was their last studio album in 1980 before they had their original breakup. This is Hot for the Orient. This is a mega rare album. I've only ever seen one copy of this. And it has the then lineup. Again, I think, yeah, Tony Williams this time, yeah. McCainish, I think, there. Bob Starkey. Freddie Strauss with his shirt off, and Bob Spencer. That was the lineup that recorded this particular album. I've only ever listened to it once on YouTube, actually. I've not actually played the vinyl. There's some interesting songs on here. Reworking of Bondage on the Boulevard, that was featured on the live BN at Allen. Interesting cuts here, like White Skin and Black Sheets, and This Town is Boring, which was the first single off the album. I actually have that, we'll get to that later. On the back here, we've got the lyrics and stuff. I think this is a different, I think this may have been the new Mushroom label that was introduced in 1980 or so. Anyway, popularity had dropped and Skyhooks disbanded after that. Anyway, in hang on, this is the wrong spot. 1982 saw the release of a box set called the Skyhooks Box, and I do have the 2 bonus LPs that came with that box. I don't actually have the box itself, unfortunately. This is the first bonus #1 album. Bit of a plain cover, really. It basically mops up some singles and B-sides and stuff. Don't know why Every Chase of Steeple is on here, because that was on the Ego is Not a Dirty Word album. We've got an unreleased track here, Bedroom Eyes, which is a bit of an interesting cut, actually, and interestingly, it does have Over the Border, but not its B-side, which I think is titled Wrong Number But the Right Girl. Don't think I've heard that one, to be honest. I think it might be on YouTube. I'm not actually listened to it. If I have, then not really noticed. Anyway, this box set came out in 1982. It has this era Mushroom label. Okay. And this is the second bonus album, which basically mops up some unreleased recordings from the time as well, titled Demos and Dialogue. In between songs, there's some interviews and some banter and stuff on stage. Early version of All My Friends Are Getting Married with a slightly different lyric arrangement and original lead vocalist, the late Steve Hill. and a couple other recordings from 74 and 77, and I think that last track there, Rolls Royce in the Swimming Pool, was a B-side, I think it was on the B-side of Keep the Junk in America, which I think was the last single they released when they were still together off the Hot for the Orient album, which had Bob Starkey on lead vocals. I've seen a performance here on YouTube on from Countdown. Didn't mind that song, actually. Haven't really found a copy of the single. Obviously didn't sell very well. Then again, I've not really found very many of their singles, as you'll see eventually. What I do have, we'll get to in a moment. When the band did their first reunion in 1983, they put together this compilation live album titled Live in the 80s, which is basically a real-life recreation of their Living in the 70s front cover, and the classic lineup with Shirley Strawn and Red Simons back in the band again. Did a number of gigs during that time. Do have the album on tape as well. I think you'll find that in the compilation as well. Some rather interesting photos from the tour featured here. As you can see, Skyhooks were known for dressing outlandishly on stage, but they sort of ditched that when Bob Spencer had his stint with the band from 77 to 80. It looks like they sort of reverted to that in 83, but not entirely. This is going to be a long video, because I'm showing more than just the LPs, as you can probably tell by the thumbnail. We've still got to show off some singles, as well as some CDs, because their CDs are a bit hard to get now. Yeah, hang on. Yeah, side one. Hang on, don't mind me, I'm just being a bit forgetful here. This is side 2 as well. And some good live performances on there. Hang on, forgot to grab one of them out of my chest of drawers just beside the bed here. There we go. We'll show that off in a moment. This is their 1990 compilation album, which I sort of partially re-borrowed for the thumbnail. Skyhooks' latest and greatest, which I also own on cassette as well. You'll have to look at that later. This is essentially the same as the best of from 1979, only with the 2 new songs, Jukebox in Siberia and Tall Timber, replacing the cover of Chuck Berry's Let It Rock and Over the Border. Seems to me like Skyhooks have completely distanced themselves from their Tony Williams recordings, because they never seem to reappear anymore. Don't know why. You'd think the band's manager, Michael Gudinski, just recently passed away earlier this year as well. Again, lyrics and stuff. Didn't know that this also came out on vinyl as well as tape and CD as well. Okay. Okay, now we move on to the singles. I do have a couple of singles. We'll start off with the 2 12-inch singles that I own. This is Women in Uniform from 1977, 78 or so. Definitely a very killer track. If you really like Australian rock and roll music, or if you wanted to find it, be sure to try and find that particular song. And very underrated. One of their best songs, to be honest. It's B-side, bit of an oddity. Don't take your lyrics to the laundromat and do the hook, which can be found on the live album, Live B in it as well. Definitely some good songs there. Around the time of their 83 tour, this might have been what inspired the tour, I think. This was a medley titled Hooked on Hooks from around 82, 83. believe it does also exist in 7-inch form, but I've not found it. B-side includes an extended instrumental version, and of course, my favourite Skyhooks song, written and sung by the band's guitar player, Red Simons. Again, I'm not going to say it. I mean, if you saw the name, I mean, basically, that particular song it has something to do with a movie theatre. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, go and find the song and listen to the lyrics and make sure you're not a social justice warrior, because it is very, very, very... I cannot describe it. You'll be very offended if you're a social justice warrior. End of story. Anyway, the 3 7-inch singles I have, this is from the Ego album, of course, mentioned before. All My Friends Are Getting Married. As I said, it's probably their most well-known song, if not horror movie is. I mean, I don't know. And the B-side, well, actually, this is a double A-side, Saturday Night. Another underrated track from that album as well. Good little riff. And everything. Next we have, this is one of the singles off the, what was it called again? Hot for the Orient, that's it. This town is boring. Although, this is a nice looking dog. Interesting drawing. Can't be certain it did. It doesn't say it did the drawing on the back, does it? No. It's probably someone in PR. And, yeah, we've got the single. And the B-side, Is This Too Much, is a non-album song. Don't think this is even on YouTube, this B-side, so... Unless you've got the single, I mean, I've not even got around to playing this, because, you know, I'm not really fond of the Tony Williams era. So this is more about Shirl, who was their more preferred singer. And this is the 1990 single from the brief reunion they had in 1990, Tall Timber. Bit of an oddity, this one, not one of my favourites. Tall Timber instrumental on the B-side, okay. Bit of an interesting choice, actually. Got the single itself. And Tall Timber instrumental, I'd say it's probably just the backing track with maybe some extra overdubs and stuff. I don't know, again, I don't play my records very often, I just like to keep them in a collection. Keep them from getting damaged. Alright, let's move on to the CDs. And their CDs are very hard to get now. This is the first one I have. I think this could be a 1990s or early 2000s CD reissue of Living in the 70s. Not 100% certain. It's got a couple of bonus live performances, including Saturday Night and Why Don't You All Get... Again, if you know what the missing word is, don't put it in the comments, alright? Because I'm sure those who've got a brain will have probably worked it out by now what the missing word is. Alright, this is the 30th anniversary CD, which includes the B-side of the Living in the 70s single, Broken Gin Bottle Baby. Another rather interesting deep cut, actually. Okay. I think this is a 90s or early 2000s reissue of Ego Is Not a Dirty Word. I did see another one of these recently, but seems to be a bit hard to find now. Don't know why these are all out of print. Oops, that's broken. Yeah, it's just a disc there, that's all that is. And we've got the live album, Live B in it. Interesting interestingly, despite it being a double LP, this is actually all on one CD. And of course, this also has a live performance of Why Don't You All Get. I believe it's only the original studio version that is uncensored. During live performances, they deliberately leave the offending word out. Latest and greatest. This isn't the original CD. This is a reissue, I think. I think the original CD has a picture disc. This is, I think, from the 2000s. Just has a blue disc. It has one of the songs missing from the LP and cassette. Don't know why it was taken off though. Others probably for space reasons. Just a lot of rubbish. This next one is a 1999 release. Skyhooks The Collection. This basically offers us another greatest hits on the first disc. Again, completely skipping over 1979 and 1980s efforts. Second disc basically mops up the two singles from 1990. The remaining songs are recordings that the band did in 1994, and they were planning on releasing them as an album, but decided not to go ahead with it because they weren't serious about the project. They just put the songs down, left them in the vaults for about 5 years, 6 years or so, and basically decided not to release them until 1999. This is also out of print as well. It's stupid, really, won't you? Yeah. But interesting, some of those songs on the second disc, like 1976 Guitar and Too Young Dollar, are actually pretty impressive for the time. Just goes to show you that bass player Greg McCanish, who wrote the majority of the songs, was still writing some pretty good stuff, even in the early 90s. This one is from 2015. This is the most recent and practically the only compilation left now, Hits and Riffs, which features some interesting remasters of the songs. Oops, looks like that offending word was indeed shown that time. But again, I'm sure you all knew that. Anyway, the last one here is also from 2015. No, this is from 2014, is it? No, this is 2015. No, it would have been 2014 anyway. This basically is a compilation of the band's first two albums. Don't you believe what you've seen and you've heard? And stuff on the back, you've got the original two albums, and you've got some demos and a couple of B-sides and bonus third disc of some live recordings from 1974 and 1975 of stuff from the first two albums. I don't know why they didn't do a follow-up to this and include the third and fourth albums and some more live or rare stuff. Which is a real shame, though. I think someone needs to get a hold of Greg McCanish or Red Simons or something. Let them know that we want some more Skyhooks, or at least I do anyway. Because you just can't get their other albums on CD anymore. They were available in the 1990s, but been out of print for too long. Just like the Australian AC/DC albums from the first four releases. I'm like, why did you delete them and replace them with the international back catalogue? Make us Aussies mad, to use an Aussie phrase that has been coined over 20 years ago from a TV ad. Not happy, Jan! Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. We're practically almost half an hour or so. Be sure to check out the channel and press the subscribe button if you're new. Be sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Be sure to look up Skyhooks as well if you're into more Australian hard rock from the 1970s. But until next video, this is the dog saying have a wonderful day. Enjoy the week coming up, and we shall see you again.